I'm Jeff Crawford, Nashville Shaman, and today I'd like to talk to you about numerology. Some of the myths that surround practices such as numerology, the first one is that it's fatalistic, that we're telling futures. Well, I'm not a fortune teller. I don't really honestly believe in that. What I find that I'm doing is I'm seeing what is already evident in your path, but nothing of any religious text that I have comprehended say that our futures are fatalistic. In fact, we're given a free will, which means we do have creative license within whatever context we have. We may not pick who we were born to. We may not pick, what we're experiencing. There's all kinds of situations going on in the world right now, and people are experiencing those situations, and I'm certain they didn't pick to experience those things. And yet, they get to choose how they respond in those situations. And so with numerology, I'm not pronouncing fates. I am showing a path, I'm showing a context, but I'm also revealing the tools that you can leverage to navigate those various paths and contexts to create the outcome that you would wish to create. Another misconception is that it's demonic, it's devilish, it's occultish in that way, and it isn't. It's very practical. What I find is that spirituality comes from digging into the real world. When we look at the ascended masters, when we look at the prophets, when we look at the apostles, when we look at saints, when we look at people like Gandhi, they didn't escape the world. They engaged in it. They had to deal with politics. They had to deal with religions. They had to deal with families. They had to deal with obligations. They had to deal with all of that, just like they had to pay their bills just like we did. And yet they wrestled with the real life situations, and in doing so, they found those to be the very keys to the spiritual truths that they found and then were teaching and exhibiting by the way they lived their real lives. In numerology, it's working with the practical. You can't get much more practical than numbers. It's math, right? And so I'm doing this math, and I'm observing the patterns in the math that are giving me practical guidance on how to manage my practical life. And in so doing, I'm able to unlock spiritual truths. I like to point out that Galileo didn't study the stars to find God, but it was in studying the stars that we realized that the earth wasn't the center of the universe, and he had an experience of God that put him in conflict with the Catholic Church at the time. Einstein and Tesla never professed to be uber religious people, and yet when you read their stories, they both will be very evident about the fact that through their study of practical science, they had an experience of the divine which changed them. Mozart didn't write music to find God, but later confessed that in writing music, he felt like God was giving him dictation. It's in dealing with these practical aspects of the world that we uncover the spiritual truths, and that's what numerology does very beautifully and very practically, I think. So those are just a couple misconceptions around numerology that just aren't true. So if you have an interest in knowing more about numerology or working with me, perhaps having a reading with your own numerology, I'd love to work with you. You can visit my website at www.nashvilleshaman.com.